Once upon a time, there lived a man named Matthew and his wife, Benita. They were happily married, and soon after their wedding, Matthew decided to share something from his past with Benita. He told her about an ex-girlfriend named Sonia, who had left him for another man. This revelation was difficult for Benita to hear, but she appreciated Matthew's honesty. When their first child was born, a beautiful baby girl, Matthew asked if they could name her Sonia. Benita was initially unhappy about this idea, feeling uncomfortable naming their daughter after Matthew's ex-girlfriend. However, Matthew managed to convince her, explaining that naming their daughter Sonia would help him move on from his past. Reluctantly, Benita agreed. 2 years later, they welcomed another child, a son named Daniel. Matthew adored his daughter Sonia and showered her with love and attention. He bought her everything she wanted, often neglecting Daniel in the process. Matthew's love for Sonia was so overwhelming that he would call Benita every hour just to check on her. Benita occasionally felt jealous of the attention Sonia received, but Matthew reassured her that he loved all of them equally. As Sonia grew, Matthew's affection for her only increased. He frequently made her promise that she would not have a boyfriend when she grew up. Sonia, not fully understanding the implications of her promise, would agree innocently. 18 years passed, and Sonia blossomed into a beautiful young woman. She began making friends, including some boys, which made Matthew very anxious and angry. One day, Matthew called Sonia to him. He reminded her of the promise she had made when she was a child, that she would not have a boyfriend. Sonia, now more mature, explained that she had been too young to understand what she was promising back then. This response made Matthew furious. He went to Benita, seeking her support, and asked her if their daughter was too young to have a boyfriend. Benita calmly replied that Sonia was 18 and had the right to choose her friends and relationships. Matthew could not accept this. He became more controlling and insisted that Sonia follow his wishes. However, Sonia was determined to live her life freely. She loved her father but wanted to make her own choices. This conflict caused tension in the household. Matthew's insistence on controlling Sonia's life strained his relationship with both his daughter and his wife. Sonia, feeling the pressure from her father, sought comfort in her friends. She confided in Daniel, who had grown up feeling somewhat neglected by their father. Daniel understood Sonia's feelings and supported her decision to live her life independently. He encouraged her to follow her heart and assured her that he would always be there for her. Despite Daniel's support, the tension in the family continued to grow. Matthew's constant interference made Sonia feel suffocated. One evening, after a heated argument, Sonia decided to leave home for a while. She needed space to think and figure out her path without her father's overbearing presence. Benita tried to mediate the situation, but Matthew's stubbornness made it difficult. He could not see past his fear of losing his daughter to another man, just as he had lost Sonia, his ex-girlfriend, many years ago. This fear blinded him to the fact that he was pushing his daughter away. While Sonia was away, one of her male friends came looking for her. He arrived at their house and met Matthew outside. The young man was about to leave when Matthew called out to him, telling him to stop. Matthew warned him sternly never to be seen with his daughter again, threatening that he would do something terrible if he disobeyed. Frightened, the young man quickly left. Every day, Matthew missed Sonia more and more. He couldn't bear the emptiness he felt without her around. Finally, he decided to go to her friend's house to see if she was there. When he arrived, he was relieved to find Sonia. With a heavy heart, Matthew apologized for his behavior. He promised her that he would no longer bother her or try to control her life. Sonia, seeing the genuine remorse in her father's eyes, believed him and agreed to come back home. Upon returning, Matthew continued to shower Sonia with gifts, hoping to make up for his past mistakes. He bought her clothes, jewelry, and anything else he thought would make her happy. However, Sonia began to feel uncomfortable with the constant flow of presents. She sensed that her father's gifts were a way to keep her close and under his control. One day, Sonia decided to talk to her mother about it. She expressed her discomfort and told Benita that she felt suffocated by Matthew's attention and gifts. Benita, however, dismissed Sonia's feelings, saying she was being foolish. Benita believed that Matthew was just showing his love and trying to make up for the past. Feeling unheard, Sonia turned to her brother Daniel. She told him how uncomfortable she felt with their father's behavior. Daniel, who had always envied the attention Sonia received, said he wished he were in her position. He couldn't understand why Sonia was complaining when she had everything she could ever want. Despite her family's lack of understanding, Sonia knew she needed to address the situation. She decided to have a serious conversation with her father. One evening, she found Matthew in the living room, looking through old photo albums. She sat down next to him and took a deep breath. "Father," she began, "I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I need to talk to you about something important." Matthew looked at her with concern. "What is it, Sonia?" Sonia explained how she felt overwhelmed by his constant gifts and attention. She told him that while she loved him, she needed space to grow and make her own decisions. She asked him to trust her and allow her to live her life independently. Matthew listened quietly. After a moment of silence, he began to speak. There was something Sonia needed to know. The reason she was named Sonia was because of his ex-girlfriend, whom he had loved very much. He saw his ex-girlfriend in Sonia, and the thought of another man having her made him feel incredibly jealous. Sonia was shocked. She asked what he meant by that, but Matthew looked away, his expression troubled. He told her she would understand soon, a cryptic response that made Sonia even more scared of her father. Feeling uneasy, Sonia decided to confide in her mother. One afternoon she told Benita that she was in love with a boy at her school. Benita advised her to be careful and not make the same mistakes she had made. Sonia asked what she meant by that, and Benita sighed deeply. She explained that Matthew didn't love her as much as she loved him. He named Sonia after his ex-girlfriend and was so obsessed with her because he saw his ex-girlfriend in her. A chill ran down Sonia's spine. This was what she had been trying to tell her mother. She didn't like the way Matthew bought her gifts and tried to keep her close. Benita dismissed her concerns, saying it was nothing. Matthew was just so obsessed with his ex-girlfriend that he saw her in Sonia. Sonia was frustrated. She couldn't wait to run far away with her boyfriend. She told her mother that after her exams, she planned to run away with him. Unknown to Sonia and Benita, Matthew was listening to their conversation. Hearing Sonia's plans to run away made Matthew's love for her die down, replaced by anger and resentment. How dare she think of running away? Where did she plan to go, and who was she going to leave him with? Matthew became obsessed with keeping Sonia all to himself. He began to think of ways to ensure she would never leave him. His mind raced with dark thoughts as he considered how to keep his daughter from escaping. As Sonia prepared for her exams, she noticed her father's behavior becoming more controlling. He started restricting her movements and monitored her closely. Sonia felt trapped and more determined than ever to leave as soon as she could. One evening, Matthew confronted Sonia in her room. She wasn't going anywhere. She belonged with her family. She needed to forget about her boyfriend. Sonia stood her ground. She loved her father, but she needed to live her own life. He couldn't keep her there against her will. Matthew's eyes flashed with anger. They would see about that. Sonia, frightened and determined, knew she had to act quickly. She secretly contacted her boyfriend and made plans to leave immediately after her exams. She also confided in Daniel, who, though initially envious, realized the seriousness of the situation and promised to help her. After her exams, Sonia came home to pack her things, thinking nobody was around. Unknown to her, Matthew was in the house. When he saw her packing her things, he grabbed her and locked her up in a secret soundproof room where nobody had access except him. Sonia realized that her worst fears had come true. She was trapped, with no way to escape and no one to hear her cries for help. Matthew then packed all of Sonia's belongings, including her phone, and burned them. He wanted to erase any evidence of her presence or her plans to leave. When Benita came home from work, she asked Matthew if he had seen Sonia because she knew Sonia was finishing her exams today and was supposed to be home by now. Benita said she had called Sonia's phone, but it was not connecting. Matthew, maintaining his calm facade, told Benita that he hadn't seen Sonia since she left for school in the morning. To divert suspicion, he started shouting, accusing Benita of spoiling their daughter. He claimed that Sonia might have run away because she had done it before. Matthew's loud accusations were meant to confuse Benita and make her believe that Sonia had indeed run away. Benita was worried and upset. She couldn't understand why Sonia would leave without saying anything. She began to question herself, wondering if she had missed any signs of her daughter's unhappiness. Matthew, seeing her distress, continued to fuel her doubts by bringing up past incidents when Sonia had been rebellious. Benita tried calling Sonia's friends, hoping someone had seen or heard from her, but nobody had any information. The more she searched for answers, the more anxious she became. Matthew watched her with a mixture of satisfaction and unease. He was relieved that his plan was working. As days turned into weeks, Benita's worry intensified. She reported Sonia missing to the police, but there were no leads. Matthew played the part of the concerned father, joining the search efforts and comforting Benita, all while keeping Sonia hidden away in the secret room. Sonia, trapped in the soundproof room, felt hopeless and terrified. She had no idea how long she would be kept there or if anyone would ever find her. She thought about her mother and Daniel, wondering if they were worried about her. The isolation was unbearable, and Sonia's fear grew with each passing day. Meanwhile, Daniel noticed the changes in his father's behavior. Matthew was more agitated and secretive than ever. Daniel started to suspect that something was wrong. He tried to talk to his mother about it, but Benita was too consumed with worry over Sonia's disappearance to pay much attention. One day, while Matthew was out running errands, Daniel decided to search the house for clues. He went through Sonia's room, looking for anything that might explain her sudden disappearance. In the back of his mind, he remembered the strange, unused storage room in the basement that his father always kept locked. Curiosity and concern drove Daniel to check the basement. He found the door to the storage room locked, as usual. Determined to find out what was inside, he searched the house for the key. After a thorough search, he finally found it hidden in Matthew's room. Just as he was trying to open the door, Matthew came in and took the key from him, warning him never to go near the door again. Days later, Daniel told his mother about the secret room in the basement. He shared his suspicions about his father, but Benita, blinded by love and trust, accused Daniel of lying about Matthew. She couldn't believe that Matthew could do something so terrible. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, thinking about what his father might be hiding. The mystery of the secret room gnawed at him, making him restless. The next day, he told his mother that he was planning to travel to stay with a friend because he was tired of living with them. Benita, still trusting Matthew, dismissed Daniel's concerns. Unknown to them, Matthew overheard their conversation and began to feel scared. He devised a plan to deal with Daniel and ensure his secret remained hidden. 2 days later, Daniel went missing. Benita tried calling his phone, but there was no connection. She asked around, but no one had seen or heard from him. Panic set in, and she reported him missing, just as she had done with Sonia. Matthew pretended to be concerned, but inside he was relieved that Daniel was out of the way. Meanwhile, every morning and night, Matthew would forcefully have his way with Sonia in the secret room. Sonia felt completely powerless and violated, her spirit breaking more each day. Soon she discovered she was pregnant. Desperate for proper medical care, she asked Matthew to take her to the hospital, but he refused. Instead, he bought her books about pregnancy, telling her to read and learn from them. Sonia's pregnancy progressed under terrible conditions. She had no one to confide in and no proper medical attention. She often thought about her mother and Daniel, wondering if they were still looking for her and if they would ever find out the truth. Benita, now dealing with the disappearance of both her children, was beside herself with worry. She clung to Matthew for support, unaware that he was the cause of her misery. The day of Sonia's delivery came. Once again she begged Matthew to take her to the hospital, but he coldly refused. He told her to handle it herself, saying she was a woman and could manage without any support. Sonia, scared and in pain, had no choice but to give birth alone. She delivered a baby boy, her heart filled with both joy and sorrow. As the days went by, Sonia struggled to care for her newborn in the confined space. Matthew's cruelty continued. Whenever Sonia asked him for anything, he would always demand something in return. His condition was clear. She had to let him have his way with her if she wanted food, clothes, or any other basic necessities. Sonia, trying to protect herself and her baby, refused his advances. Matthew responded with harsh punishment. He starved her for days, not caring that she had just given birth and needed nourishment to care for her baby. Sonia felt weak and desperate, but she refused to give in to Matthew's demands. She grew thinner and weaker, struggling to produce enough milk for her baby. Matthew's threats and manipulation wore her down, but she clung to the hope that one day she and her child would be free from his control. When Sonia saw that she couldn't produce enough milk for her baby, she felt desperate and helpless. The lack of food and proper care had taken a toll on her body, and her baby needed nourishment. Reluctantly, she gave in to Matthew's demands, hoping to secure food and other necessities for her child. Matthew, satisfied with his control over Sonia, provided her with the food and supplies she needed, but his cruelty didn't stop. Sonia endured the torment for the sake of her baby, but the situation took a heavy toll on her mental and physical health. 2 months after giving birth, Sonia found out she was pregnant again. The news filled her with dread. She was already struggling to care for one baby under such harsh conditions, and the thought of bringing another child into this nightmare was unbearable. She felt trapped and hopeless, not knowing how she could possibly survive another pregnancy and childbirth in such circumstances. Matthew, upon learning about the new pregnancy, was both pleased and more possessive. He saw it as another way to keep Sonia bound to him, ensuring she would never be able to leave. He continued his controlling behavior, making Sonia's life even more difficult. Sonia's health deteriorated further as her pregnancy progressed. She lacked proper medical care and nutrition, and the stress of her situation made everything worse. When the time came for Sonia to deliver her second baby, she pleaded with Matthew once again to take her to the hospital. But he coldly refused, just as he had done before. With no support, Sonia had to give birth alone in the secret room. The labor was long and painful, and she felt weaker than ever. Somehow, she managed to deliver a baby girl, but the experience left her physically and emotionally drained. As Sonia cared for her newborn and her first child, she struggled more than ever. Matthew's demands for her compliance continued, and the cycle of abuse seemed never-ending. Sonia did everything she could to protect her children, even if it meant sacrificing her own well-being. Meanwhile, Benita's worry for Sonia and Daniel grew stronger. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Sonia had never been the type to just disappear, and the fact that both of her children were missing made her even more suspicious. Desperate for answers, Benita pressured the police to investigate Matthew more thoroughly. She insisted that her daughter couldn't have run away without a trace, and shared every piece of information she could think of, hoping it would lead them to the truth. At first, the police were reluctant, but Benita's persistence made them take her concerns more seriously. They decided to keep a closer watch on Matthew, who noticed their interest and quickly began to cover his tracks. When the police questioned him, Matthew was calm and convincing. He told them that Sonia had a history of running away and that she had done it before. He even suggested that they investigate Sonia's boyfriend, implying that he might be involved in her disappearance. The police followed Matthew's suggestion and went to Sonia's boyfriend's house. They searched for any evidence that might connect him to Sonia's disappearance, but found nothing suspicious. Without any solid evidence, the police eventually dropped the case, believing that Sonia had indeed run away as Matthew claimed. Benita was heartbroken, but with no help from the authorities and no new leads, she was left with only her unanswered questions and growing despair. 15 years passed, and during that time, Sonia gave birth to 4 children, all fathered by Matthew. Trapped in the secret room, she did her best to raise her children in the harsh environment she was forced to live in. As they grew older, Sonia knew they needed more than what she could provide within the confines of the room. One day, she gathered the courage to talk to Matthew about enrolling their children in school. She knew they deserved a proper education and a chance at a better life. But when she brought up the idea, Matthew's response was as cold and controlling as ever. He refused outright, telling her she must be out of her mind to think he would ever allow the children to go to school. Instead of giving them the opportunity to learn and grow, Matthew bought them some books and writing supplies, ordering Sonia to teach them how to read and write herself. He had no intention of letting them leave the house or be exposed to the outside world. Sonia's heart sank, but she knew she had no choice but to comply. As the years went by, Sonia did her best to educate her children with the limited resources she had. She taught them how to read, write, and do basic arithmetic, all while hiding the truth about their father and the world beyond the walls of their home. Despite her efforts, she couldn't ignore the growing fear that her children were being deprived of the life they deserved. Matthew's control over her and the children remained unbreakable, and Sonia felt more trapped than ever. Inside, Sonia's hope for freedom slowly faded. She lived each day in quiet despair, dreaming of a life she once had and a future she feared would never come. The years passed, and her children grew up knowing only the isolated life Matthew had forced upon them. Sonia's only solace was the love she had for her children, and the hope that one day something might change. One day, Sonia asked Matthew to change the toilet because it was no longer suitable for her and the kids. The bathroom was in terrible condition, making their already harsh living situation even worse. Matthew looked at her coldly and said he would only do it if she let him have his way with her first. Desperate for any improvement, Sonia reluctantly agreed. After Matthew was done with her, he did not keep to his promise. Instead, he told Sonia to manage with the bathroom they had. This betrayal hurt her deeply, but she had no choice but to endure it for the sake of her children. Meanwhile, Benita grew tired of Matthew's cold and distant behavior. He barely paid attention to her, and the love that once existed between them seemed long gone. Frustrated and lonely, Benita decided she couldn't live like this anymore. She packed her things and left him, hoping to find some peace and start a new life. Instead of feeling sad or regretful about Benita leaving, Matthew felt a strange sense of relief. With her gone, he felt he had one less person to deceive and control. When Sonia asked about her mother and brother, Matthew told her that Benita had left him and that Daniel had suddenly disappeared. Sonia was devastated. She knew deep down that Matthew was responsible for her brother's disappearance, but she felt powerless to do anything about it. One day, Sonia's eldest child, Joseph, began to question their situation. He was smart and curious, even though he knew nothing about the outside world. His questions became more persistent. "Why can't we go outside, Mama?" Joseph asked one evening. "Why do we have to stay here all the time?" Sonia's heart ached as she looked into her son's innocent eyes. "It's for your safety," she said gently. "The world outside can be dangerous." Joseph accepted her answer for a moment, but then asked, "But why is it dangerous for us?" Sonia struggled to find the right words. "We have to stay here because it's safer for us," she said, her voice trembling. Joseph didn't seem satisfied with the answer, but he didn't press further. Instead, he turned his attention to his younger siblings, trying to keep their spirits up with games and stories. Sonia watched him with a heavy heart, knowing she had to find a way to give her children a better life. One day, while Matthew was out shopping, Sonia saw a small chance to escape. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she felt she had to try. She called her son Joseph over, and they both went to the door, hoping to find a way out. Sonia tried to open it, but it was locked tight. They looked around for something to help, even using a kitchen knife to try and pry it open. Despite their best efforts, the door wouldn't budge. In their struggle, they left scratches on the wall near the door. Realizing they couldn't hide the marks, Sonia felt a deep sense of fear. She knew Matthew would notice and wouldn't believe any excuse she made. When Matthew came home and saw the scratches, his face twisted in anger. He immediately demanded to know what had happened. Sonia, trying to protect her children, told Matthew that the kids had been playing and accidentally scratched the wall. But Matthew didn't believe her. He could see the fear in her eyes and knew she was lying. In his anger, Matthew decided to punish her in a way that would make sure she never tried to escape again. His fury only grew as he realized that Sonia had likely tried to escape. In his twisted mind, he saw her actions as a betrayal, and he decided to punish her in the most cruel and degrading way he could think of. He grabbed Sonia roughly and forced her to the ground in front of their terrified children. Despite her pleas for mercy and the cries of her children, Matthew had his way with her right there, making sure the kids witnessed everything. It was a horrifying scene, meant to break Sonia's spirit and instill fear in the children so that they would never dare to try escaping again. As if that wasn't enough, Matthew further punished them by depriving the entire family of food for 3 days. He locked the kitchen and kept the key with him, leaving Sonia and the children to suffer in hunger. The children cried from the pain in their empty stomachs, but Sonia could do nothing to help them. She felt utterly defeated, her hope crushed by Matthew's cruelty. The days passed slowly, each one filled with fear, shame, and helplessness. Sonia grew weaker, and her children lost energy as they struggled to survive the harsh punishment. Matthew watched them suffer, feeling satisfied that he had regained control. In his mind, he believed they would never try to escape again. But deep inside, Sonia's determination began to grow stronger. She knew that if they were going to survive, she had to find a way out of this nightmare. She couldn't let her children grow up trapped like this, under the control of a man who showed no kindness. Although her body was weak and her spirit was hurt, Sonia silently promised herself that she wouldn't give up. Sonia's world became darker when her youngest child, a little girl who had always struggled with asthma, became gravely ill. The lack of food and constant fear had weakened her body, and now she was so sick that she could barely move. Sonia watched in horror as her daughter's breathing grew shallow, her chest rising and falling with painful effort. It was clear she needed help, but Sonia was powerless to provide it. When Matthew returned home, Sonia was filled with desperation. She fell to her knees, begging him to take their daughter to the hospital. Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded, her voice cracking with fear and urgency. She knew that without medical care, her daughter's life was in danger. But Matthew, cold and unfeeling, refused. He claimed that taking her to the hospital would draw unwanted attention, that people would ask questions he couldn't afford to answer. He was more concerned with protecting his dark secret than with saving his daughter's life. Sonia's heart broke as she realized there was no way to convince him. She was forced to watch as her daughter's condition worsened. The little girl's breathing became more labored until finally it stopped altogether. The room fell into a suffocating silence, the stillness broken only by Sonia's quiet sobs, feeling a profound emptiness settle inside her. The loss was unbearable, the pain so deep that it felt like a physical wound. In the aftermath of her daughter's death, Sonia's grief quickly turned to anger. The sorrow that had once consumed her was replaced by a burning fury. She couldn't accept what had happened. How could Matthew be so cruel, so heartless? She had lost her child because of his cold refusal to act, and the injustice of it all filled her with a rage she had never felt before. As the years went by, Sonia's life became a constant struggle in the small, cramped room where she and her children had been trapped for nearly 24 years. The children, now adults, were too big for the space that had once barely fit them as kids. The walls felt like they were closing in on them, and the air was thick with despair. Sonia, once full of life, was now 42 years old, her body marked by years of neglect and abuse. Her spirit was worn down by the constant control Matthew had over them. One day, Sonia fell seriously ill. Her body, weakened by the years of stress and poor living conditions, couldn't fight off the sickness. She lay in the tiny room, too weak to move, while her children watched in fear. They knew their father wouldn't help. When Matthew finally returned and saw her condition, he refused to take her to the hospital, just as he had refused to help their sick daughter years ago. Instead, he brought back some medicine from the pharmacy. Luckily, Sonia slowly started to recover, but her hatred for Matthew only grew stronger. She could no longer just sit and accept their fate. One day, gathering every ounce of strength she had left, she decided to confront Matthew again. But this time she wouldn't beg. She was done with that. When Matthew entered the room, she stood tall, despite the exhaustion weighing her down. Sonia looked Matthew straight in the eyes, her voice steady but filled with quiet anger. "We can't live like this anymore, Matthew. The children are grown now. They need proper education, medical care, and a chance to live normal lives. We all do. We need to get out of this room. This isn't a life. It's just surviving." Matthew's response was cold and heartless, as always. Without even thinking about her words, he shook his head. "No, you will never leave this room. None of you will. This is your life now, and it's going to stay that way. I won't let you out, and I won't let anyone take you away from me." Sonia's frustration finally boiled over into anger. She had been pushed to her breaking point. Years of bottled-up rage, sorrow, and hopelessness burst out of her. She looked at Matthew with pure hatred. "You are a monster, Matthew. You've taken everything from me and from our children. But I promise you this. You will not die in peace. You will suffer for what you've done to us. You will not die well." Matthew didn't flinch. He showed no remorse, no guilt. Instead, he sneered at her, brushing off her words as if they meant nothing. "Your curses mean nothing to me, Sonia," he said coldly. "I am in control here, and nothing you say will change that." As Matthew left the room, Sonia sank down, feeling more trapped than ever. The walls seemed to close in even more, the air felt heavier. Her children looked at her with a mix of worry and admiration. They had seen their mother stand up to their father like never before. But nothing had changed. They were still prisoners in this tiny, suffocating space. A week after Sonia's confrontation with Matthew, another of her children, Mabel, fell seriously ill. Sonia could see that her daughter was in terrible shape, and she was terrified that she might lose another child. This time, Matthew seemed to understand that the situation was dire. He knew he couldn't afford to let another child die, so he decided to take Mabel to the hospital. When Sonia begged to go with them, Matthew refused. He didn't want anyone to see her. He feared that if people saw how thin and frail Sonia had become, they would suspect that something was wrong. So he left the house with Mabel, promising to bring her back as soon as she was better. At the hospital, the doctors were shocked when they saw Mabel. She was severely malnourished, and her condition was alarming. One of the doctors, clearly disturbed by her appearance, pulled Matthew aside. "If you hadn't brought her in today, she wouldn't have made it," the doctor said gravely. Meanwhile, back at home, Sonia was praying with all her strength. She begged God to save her daughter's life. Desperate and unable to do anything else, she once again tried to open the door, but it was as hopeless as before. She felt trapped and helpless, just like she had for the past 24 years. At the hospital, it was getting late. The doctor suggested that Matthew go home and rest. Instead, Matthew rented a room at a nearby hotel, not wanting to leave Mabel alone for too long. The next morning, he returned to the hospital. The doctor, now more suspicious of Matthew, asked about Mabel's mother. Matthew quickly lied, saying she was dead. The doctor frowned but didn't press the matter further. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Over the next couple of days, Mabel's condition improved significantly. The doctor told Matthew that she would soon be ready to go home. Matthew, realizing that the doctor might be getting suspicious, decided to warn Mabel. He went to her hospital room and told her in a stern voice, "You must not tell anyone about our home or about your mother. Do you understand? If you say anything, there will be consequences." Mabel, frightened and still weak, nodded. She promised not to say anything, but that evening, as Matthew returned to his hotel room, he was restless. He couldn't sleep, haunted by the fear that Mabel might slip up and reveal their secret. Back at the hospital, a nurse named Clara came to check on Mabel. She noticed the sadness in the girl's eyes and asked her gently, "How did you get so sick, sweetheart?" At first, Mabel was too scared to answer, but Clara was kind and reassuring. "You can trust me," she said. "I won't tell anyone if you don't want me to." Feeling a small sense of safety for the first time, Mabel slowly started to tell the nurse everything. She spoke of the secret room, of how they had been locked away for years, of the terrible things Matthew had done to them. Clara listened in shock, her heart breaking for the young girl. After Mabel finished her story, Clara quietly left the room. She went straight to her office and called the police. She knew she had to act fast to save Mabel and her family. The next morning, when Matthew returned to the hospital, he was unaware that plainclothes police officers were waiting for him. As he walked into Mabel's room, they appeared, and before he could react, he was arrested. Matthew was handcuffed and led away, his control over Sonia and the children finally shattered. The police quickly moved to rescue Sonia and the other children. When they entered the house and unlocked the secret room, they found them weak but alive. Sonia was overwhelmed with relief as they were taken to the hospital for immediate care. The nightmare that had lasted for 24 years was finally over. In the following months, Matthew was put on trial. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge, disgusted by his actions, made it clear that Matthew would never see freedom again. For Sonia and her children, life began anew. They were finally free from the prison that had held them for so long. Sonia, with the support of her children, began to rebuild her life.
She found strength in her faith and soon became an evangelist, sharing her story of survival and resilience with others. In a surprising turn of events, Sonia reconnected with her old boyfriend. He had gone through a difficult divorce, and when they met again, the old feelings between them rekindled. He admired her strength and the love she had for her children. Eventually, they got married, and for the first time in decades, Sonia experienced happiness and peace. Sonia and her children slowly healed from the trauma of their past. They found joy in the simple things: sunlight, fresh air, and the freedom to live their lives. They knew that the scars of the past would never fully disappear, but they were determined to move forward, leaving the darkness behind. And so, despite everything they had endured, Sonia and her family found their way to a new beginning, where they could finally live freely, love deeply, and embrace the future with hope.
Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.